थोड़ा सा टाइम हमारा ज़्यादा हो गया है, तो we'll start the next session now, and we'll take any Q's and A's at the end, and at the end of this you are invited to have high tea. So may I ask Huda to invite the panel.
Thank you, Dr. Saida. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I'd now like to take this opportunity to invite our next set of panelists. Can all of you please be seated? I'd like to request Mr. Robin Gupta to kindly grace the next session with his presence. He will be chairing the upcoming session, which is Charting a Way Forward. Robin Gupta is a former IAS and Financial Commissioner of Punjab, and his book, And What Remains in the End, is prescribed reading for aspirants to the civil servants and also a bestseller. ख्वातीन हज़रात, आपकी थोड़ी सी दाद चाहिए. We are almost nearing the end of our colloquium. This is the last session. Thank you. Our next set of panelists would, next in line would be Ms. Farah Naqvi. May I invite upon stage Ms. Farah Naqvi. Farah speaks and writes widely on justice and equality for women, Dalits and Muslims, battling violence against women, communalism, caste-based violence, and conflict-induced internal displacement through public policy, law, reform, and direct work with the survivors. Ms. Farah Naqvi. Next would be Ms. Samina Mishra. I'd like to invite upon stage Ms. Samina Mishra, who is a documentary filmmaker, writer, and teacher with a special interest in media for the children. She's also the curator of Half Ticket, the children's section at the Mami Mumbai Film Festival. Ms. Samina Mishra. Next, I'd like to invite upon stage Mr. Ovais Sultan Khan. A huge round of applause for Mr. Ovais Sultan. Thank you. Ovais is a writer, activist, and researcher, and currently also the managing trustee of Anhad. Next, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite Ms. Saman Habib. Saman Habib. She is a senior principal scientist at Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, that is a CSIR, in molecular and structural biology. Last but definitely not the least, I would now like to invite upon Mr. Jamal Kidwai. Mr. Jamal Kidwai is currently the director of NGO Aman Trust, and over the last 15 years, he has worked in Kashmir, Bihar, and UP. Thank you very much. I now hand over the mic to the chair, Mr. Robin Gupta. Sir, mic is all yours. Thank you.
Samina, Ovais, Saman, and Jamal.
When do you want me to speak?
In order.
You can invite them just the way they are. Would you like to speak first? If you want to speak first, you speak first.
What do you suggest?
Maybe speak first. Okay? Or at the end. Maybe you speak at the end.
I'll speak at the end.
So you can call the first speaker.
Uh,
Your panel is charting the way forward. This is where we are going, what we discussed.
Yes. Good evening, friends. This is the last session we have, and I'll straight away invite Farah Naqvi to take the stage.
Would you like to introduce the topic?
Charting the way forward.
Sorry, with the permission of the chair. With it sounding, I just want to say that this there has to be a way forward. So far, we have discovered that there's a whole wealth of information and personalities that we have not covered. And partly because some of them have been made so well known, for example, Rakshanda's work on Rashid Jahan, for example, Ismat Chughtai, Qurratul Ain Haider, and some of them are very well known but not that well known. So that's not a good enough excuse, but as I said, this is only, it's something which is work in progress. And I really hope, and this is what Robin and I and Sayyida Imam, who's been very much a mind behind all this, and she's regretting that she had to leave and she's sitting in the US. We thought that what are we going to gain from this? Is it just remembering our mothers, honoring our mothers? During this time, the ideas have been thrown in by various speakers. What are we going to get out of it? So, what is the way forward? By remembering our mothers, by nurturing our mothers, by remembering the pathbreakers, what are we passing on, not just to the generation next to me or even the third generation, but the generation which has not heard even the slightest inkling of the contribution and how to integrate it in life, especially in these times where every speaker has said that this is a very, very difficult phase that the country is passing. So I think that is what we discussed, Robin, if I can reflect that. And then you can certainly, Farah, you can take it forward beautifully. All of you. This is a young panel, and Robin is rightly the chair of this young panel. Give a big hand for this panel, please.
Shukriya, Sayyida Appa. We have a large panel, and there's lots I wanted to say, and I will try and restrict my thoughts. Sabse pehle to a thank you to you, Sayyida Appa, for putting together, initiating not just a colloquium and an exhibition, but for bringing together in a room people who can have varied views on a very, very contentious issue today. And I say contentious not because Muslim women are contentious, but because iconography and representations in the political space are contentious about the Muslim community. So thank you to UN Women for having the space and the foresight and the expanse to partner with the Muslim Women's Forum in doing this. And thank you above all actually for allowing each of us, we've heard from the morning, a lot of people also expressing a discomfort with the thematic. And that too is a legitimate part of the conversation that we need to have. Engage with the discomfort. What is the reason for that discomfort? Gargi raised some discomfort with the articulation. Farida Khan, and I'm sorry some of you missed that session in the morning, because it raises issues that we all need to. So when Sayyida Appa says, let's look for the way forward, I think the way forward has to include engaging with all the various opinions that are being expressed on this. So it's very generous for anyone to have an exhibition and then to call people and say, agree, disagree, let's just somehow say we've made a beginning and let's move forward on this. So for that, I congratulate you. One of the things that presenters in the morning said was कि ये आजकल तो जो मुसलमान औरतों को बचाने के लिए ये मुल्क निकला है, और ख़ासकर जो आज की हुकूमत मुसलमान औरतों को बहुत बचाना चाहती है, जो लोग बचाना चाह रहे हैं वो पहले अपनी गुर्बत तो देख लें कि बाकी औरतों का क्या हश्र है इस मुल्क में. So I want to begin, as I was leaving this morning and I was reading my morning newspaper, this is what I came across. This is today's newspaper. It's there in every single newspaper. This is the Narendra Modi's government's claim to empowering Indian women. And because this is a colloquium about iconography and about representation, I believe we each need to engage with the representation of Indian women, realizing India's full potential. Can just देश का बढ़ता जाता विश्वास, साफ नियत, सही विकास. अब आप देख लीजिए, पहली इमेज है एक प्रेग्नेंट औरत. ये फेमिनिज्म के किस दायरे में आपको कि औरत एक सिर्फ गर्भवती है. दूसरी इमेज, औरत एलपीजी सिलेंडर लिए बैठी है, लिहाजा वो चौके में, चूल्हे में जिंदगी उसकी गुजरेगी. तीसरी इमेज, एक औरत बच्चे के साथ, बड़ी प्यारी इमेज है. गाय बछड़ा किसको अच्छा नहीं लगता, लेकिन अगर हम फेमिनिज्म की बात करते हैं और नारीवादी सोच की बात करते हैं, तो इन पहली 3 इमेजेस जो कि नॉन मुस्लिम इमेजेस हैं, मुझे इनमें कुछ ज़्यादा प्रोग्रेसिव थॉट या इमेंसिपेशन या लिबरेशन की एक रत्ती बराबर झलक नहीं दिखती. और चौथी इमेज तो वाह 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 कि एक मुसलमान औरत बुरखे से निकली. और हमने टेक्स्ट नहीं डाला है, लेकिन इस इश्तिहार के साथ जो बड़ा बड़ा टेक्स्ट था वो ये था कि हमने फलाना ढिमकाना तो किया ही है. मुसलमान औरतों के लिए हमने ट्रिपल तलाक से निजात भी दिलवाई है, लोकसभा में पारित हो गया है, लिहाजा वाह 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 वाह. और ये कितनी खुश दिख रही है ये मुसलमान औरत अपने बुरखे से उतरी हुई. तो देखिए, आइकोनोग्राफी किसी महिला की, हिंदू महिला जो कि मेजॉरिटी हैं, जो कि बहुसंख्यक हैं, उनकी इमेज इस मुल्क में कुछ इस जैसी है. सो द बिचारास अनफॉर्चुनेटली आर एवरीबॉडी. द रीजन वी आर yes, all Indian women are jacketed in these really regressive, anti-feminist images. And that is the belief of not just this government, of previous governments, but I believe particularly so of this government. It's a very, very anti-feminist government. And so you have a particular challenge right there. Now you come to the Muslim and the Muslim women. Look, clearly, this colloquium, this exhibition is a response. It is a response to, I mean, you may be taken, there is an exotique about it. There is a nostalgia about it. Look at these images. These are very nostalgic sepia images of the India of yore. But it has a political purpose. And I think that is it is not just about the nostalgic Nawabi Muslim. It is a political purpose that this colloquium, to my understanding, clearly has. And that is that you cannot allow any one strand of history to be obliterated from this country. Any strand. It could be Muslim women today, it could be somebody else tomorrow. But that is what is there is an agenda. There is a clearly crafted, thought through agenda in which not only Muslim women's contribution, but Muslim contributions to Indian history are being obliterated to the extent that this government can get away with it. And if they come back to power, they will certainly. So history textbooks are being changed, and roads are being named, and forts are being renamed. The Akbar fort was renamed in Rajasthan, and so on and so forth. But, here's where the challenge is, and that is what Farida also articulated this morning. On the one hand, we do not want a history to be obliterated, and this colloquium is the exhibition response. But on the other hand, the discomfort that is articulated also is that, do we want to be forced, or should Muslim women be forced into articulating themselves as a separate strand under a separate title called Muslim women? And the tragedy is, again, as one of the panelists earlier said, is that all of these women up here and up in the exhibition foyer ought to have been part of mainstream knowledge. They should be part, they should not be ये मुस्लिम औरतों का contribution, ये ईसाई औरतों का contribution, ये आदिवासियों का contribution. This is the contribution of all India, of all Indian women, and they should have been. So this is a failure of Indian historiography because, by the way, this is not a failure that has occurred in the last 4 years. This is a failure that's been there before that in previous regimes as well. So I think we need to, as political creatures charting a future, be mindful of the need to not obliterate and understand the objective, but equally be cautious that we do not want a separate articulation of ये मुसलमान औरतों का ये औरतों का contribution था, ये हिंदुस्तानी औरतों का contribution था. तो ये discomfort हमें, we need to keep this discomfort alive is what I'm saying. Let us not settle into a separate articulation of, and many suggestions came from the audience in the morning. You know, somebody said we should call this Indian 20th century Indian women from Muslim communities. Now look, even the fact that the finer points of nomenclatures, of articulations are being debated in a group like this means that there is something going on there. There is a discomfort. We want to position it just rightly. कि है acknowledge करो लेकिन separately acknowledge मत करो. तो ये discomfort, ये जिंदाबाद, ये discomfort ही हमें एक articulation दिखाएगी. So we need to keep that alive. This brings up, you see, this is in a cultural and political representation space. We have faced the same challenges when it comes to public policy, for example, which is a field that I'm most familiar with. So parallels in public policy are what? For 70 years, you've had development, you've had the Sachar Committee report. Muslims are down in the dumps. They are the bottom heap. Instead of bringing all Indians up, our policies have succeeded in adding Muslims along with Dalits and tribals to the bottom of our development rubbish heap. All right, what do? Clearly, just mainstream policies did not work. In 2006, when the Ministry of Minority Affairs started, there were many of us who had acute discomfort. I did, Zoya did, many of us internally we had conversations and said, you know, is separate ministries really the way forward? Why should Muslims not be looked after by all the mainstream ministries? But the response was, well, we tried that. 60, 70 years, nothing happened, so we had to create separate spaces. We had to create a separate policy, a separate program, a targeted program. That was a response in public policy. We tried exactly the same thing. Mainstream. No. Muslims are... Look, I grew up in a... हमारे घर में मेरी अम्मा जान, मेरी दादी का सबसे पसंदीदा सोहर आप लोग जानते हैं क्या होता है? जब बच्चा पैदा होता है तो घर में एक it's like a शुभ, it's a song, it's a celebration of the coming child. और उनका सबसे पसंदीदा सोहर क्या था? अल्लाह मियाँ हमरे भैया का देव नंदलाल. ओ अल्लाह, give my son a child like Lord Krishna. इस सिंक्रेटिक कल्चर की तो मैं पली बड़ी हूँ. इस सिंक्रेटिक अवध के तो हम बाशिंदे हैं. अब हमारे लिए ये सेपरेट हिंदू मुस्लिम करना कहीं ना कहीं चोट बहुत पहुंचाता है कि ये क्यों सेपरेट आर्टिकुलेशन हो रही है. मैं तो हिंदुस्तानी महिला हूँ, हम तो बिंदी पहनते हैं, हम तो सब करते हैं. तो ये कॉशन हमें हर वक्त बरकरार रखना पड़ेगा. पब्लिक पॉलिसी में भी ट्राई किया. अभी हाल में हमने एक किताब निकाली, वर्किंग विद मुस्लिम्स बियॉन्ड बुरखा एंड ट्रिपल तलाक. We launched the book in March. Many colleagues here were part of writing and creating that book. It's a book about development. It's a book about why civil society and NGOs have not worked with Muslims. And it was a response to that reality. And yet, when we went around interviewing many NGOs, many people said, "Bhai, dekhiye, aap sirf Musalmanon ki baat kyun kar rahe hain?" Because, we are secular. We work with everybody. And, we don't know who we work with. We just work with poor people. We can't tell you if we're working with Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Adivasis, nothing. Because our criteria is just poverty. And this articulation. So we said, look, nobody is wanting to divide people, but it is necessary. Oh, conclude in 2 minutes. Okay. But it is necessary when there is an obvious gap and an obvious lacunae in civil society that people work with Muslims, and we need to know who is not, and how they can be encouraged. So it was a development agenda, and yet there was, so we are all negotiating in contemporary Indian polity today a desire to be in the mainstream, having thought of ourselves as in the mainstream and of our work as in the mainstream, and the contemporary politics that is pushing you more and more into creating separate spaces for yourself. So I think we need to take that. So let me get to the idea of stereotypes, which is what this is responding to, the stereotype Muslim woman in a burqa and in a hijab. Look, in all my feminist trainings 101 that I have done and I have received, something very fundamental is taught to us as feminists, is take charge of your own representation. And that is a very important lesson, especially in a highly mediated age, in an age where images are determining realities, where you are not, there is no tactile touch. You're not really engaging with people and with communities. You're understanding them through a series of images. We are living in an image-dominated age. And in that, to take over, so I think what this exhibition is doing is seizing control of a representation that has gone out of control and saying, somebody needs to represent this more accurately. And so what I would also like to see going forward, however, is not just the histories of these women, but the actual content of what they did. I read Sultana's Dream when I was about 18 years old. I was studying in America at the time, and at that time reading it, and I read it, I was studying doing liberal arts, I had a bunch of American friends around me, and we all read it. Nobody noticed that it was written by a Muslim woman, because at that stage, I was just an Indian among Americans, and everybody was taken up by in 1905, for somebody to have written something as fantastic as Sultana's Dream was a feminist breakthrough. So rather than only engage with Ruqayya Hussain as who she was and where she came from, it is equally important to engage with the substance of what she wrote. And that, my friends, is what will challenge not just those outside or the RSS or the right wing or the image makers, that will challenge the community conservatism from the inside. And that, to me, is equally important, is that we need to take the works of these. आप किसी conservative मौलाना साहब को लिहाफ पढ़ के सुना दीजिए, वो तो इस्मत चुगताई को यूं नकारेंगे, हम उनको claim करते हैं. So I'm saying engage with the content of what these amazing women did and wrote, rather than just with where they came from. Because if we engage only at that level, it will become like a अशरफों की जमात. Because एक elitism है निहित, इस एग्जीबिशन में भी है, सुबह से लेकर अब तक जो बातें हुई हैं, इस सब में एक, अब देखिए हर कम्युनिटी को कुछ करने के लिए, उस लेवल की पढ़ाई के लिए एक एलीट कौम ने ही किया. लेकिन गोइंग फॉरवर्ड, we have to also understand that the majority of Indian Muslims are OBCs. They are not ashrafs. And you want to engage with young people from there, you will have to also look for other iconography. So that is something that I would suggest. I will just, end with one last, I was asked to end in 1 second. So my last 1 second will be, but one is this, that these are all respectable women. they are respectable, they are exquisite, they are elegant, they are elite. These are the words we use for them. And there is a problem there. And we need to get into the non-respectable, and we need to get into Rasulan Bai, and we need to get into Akhtari Bai, who then became Begum Akhtar, but was Akhtari Bai to begin with. And we need to engage with and represent and portray those women as well. And this brings me to my absolute last point. The reason we are somewhat trapped in an iconography that is both extremely elite is because we are also responding to a moment when Muslims are repeatedly being told they are anti-national. And so there is throughout the undercurrent of the exhibition, of the writing, there is a claim to nationalism, right? We all contributed to nation building. I think that is to a political response. There is I could read from the concept note, which uses the word, they contributed to nationalism. And I think we need to liberate ourselves from that, because nationalism and the nation state, to me, are deeply contentious ideas and concepts, and we need to unpackage that. And to me, cultural icons, musicians who may not have been around or may not have contributed to the freedom struggle or been part of the Constituent Assembly or been MLAs, because that is the framework in which we're seeking to limit ourselves. And I would not like us to do that. To me, nationalism is anybody who has lived here and has contributed to their family, to their own lives. So, I think that we need to break free from the shackles of representing ourselves only within the framework of the nationalist Muslim. So, lots more to say, but I will end here. Thank you very much.
I request Samina Mishra now to kindly share her thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you, Farah. I think it will help me, the framework that you've set out will help me in setting out what I would like to share with you. Of course, my generation, are indebted to the women who came before us, because we have had the liberty to make the choices that we have wanted and to live the lives that we have wanted, which throw up the questions that Farah actually has set out for us. I'm in the business of representation. I work with stories and the people in those stories, and it is my work is about thinking about the questions of how do we represent, which are the stories we pick, who are the people that we pick, whose stories we deem being told, and how do we go out and represent them. We've heard from the morning about the need to break stereotypes, and I think that if we are to think of a way forward, then we need to pay attention and we need to consider these questions of who do we pick, whose stories we think are relevant, and how do we represent those particular people. So what I thought I would do is I would share with you some of the Muslim women that I have encountered in the course of my work, and see if that sort of brings out the diversity of Muslim women who actually inhabit our world today. And in the course of my work, in the last, almost 3 decades, I think the one thing that I've understood, and it seems to be a given, is that nobody, for the women in these exhibitions, fighting to get an education was the step. That was the challenge and that was the struggle. But I don't think that that's really a question anymore. People accept that you need to have education. And everybody from the working class Basti dweller to middle class people to the elite, everybody knows that, they have to send the girls also to school. There are issues. I am generalizing. There are questions, for example, for crafts communities in Old Delhi, for example, who work till late in the night. Then it is a question of how do we get our kids to school. Those issues remain. But by and large, everybody accepts that there is a place for education and girls should be educated. So what then is the question? How then do we find this ability to be able to represent, as Farah brought up, that how do we find that ability to represent ourselves and represent in a diverse way. I think that really is the thing that we need to think about if we want to think of a way forward. So I thought I'd share with you a few women that young girls and women that I have encountered. The first is a young girl who I met in 1999, Hina. She was 10 years old at that time, and she belonged to a crafts community, a family working with Zardozi, also metalwork in Old Delhi. She was studying in a government school. She was going to the neighboring house to learn to read the Quran and also to learn a little bit more of embroidery, but she knew she didn't want to do embroidery. She wanted to be a teacher. 2 years ago, so I had done a little book about her. 2 years ago, I tried to find out where she was, and I went back to her home. She's married, and she was expecting her third child, and no, she's not a teacher. That's one. Then Purva is sitting here, and she was my colleague on this project, and we met this young woman together, Shabana, in a village on the outskirts of Moradabad, a student of a madrasa for girls, which was a really, it was a big step because it was a girls' madrasa, and there was a space where many girls like Shabana were for the first time in their families, the first generation to be able to get that education. And earlier, Rakshanda was talking about the madrasa set up by Sheikh Abdullah, and it reminded me a bit of this madrasa because they tick off all those things. They are teaching them history and geography and science, and in fact, judo as well, right? But Shabana was not just a great supporter of the parda, but of an extreme kind of parda in which she would wear socks and gloves also to go out. Shabana was very proud of the fact that she was the first generation woman in her family to study, but then she did not want to do the work that the family had been doing for generations. So the collecting the gobar and dealing with the cattle and all, that was not what she wanted to do anymore. So she also wanted to then become a teacher. And meanwhile, that work then her mother continued to do, and I'm not sure then after Shabana who was going to do that. So that was another. Then I did a project in Okhla with a group of young girls. They were in middle school. They were studying in class 6th, 7th, and 8th in Jamia, in the two Jamia schools, the English medium and the Urdu medium school. They first of all they couldn't understand. I mean, we talk about representation and having the agency to be able to represent yourself. They couldn't understand why we were doing this workshop in which we were talking to them about their lives and stories from their lives, and that could it be of interest to anybody else? Could it be of interest to the outside world? So anyway, we did the workshop and we had them, they wrote about many beautiful things, about things that they see in their streets and the clothes that they wear and the clothes they aspire to wear, which included, you know, a muffler which reminded a young girl of Kareena Kapoor, a pair of jeans in a mall shop window, in a mall that's not so far from Batla House. They wrote about their names, and a young girl called Maria wrote about how she often gets teased about her name because everyone calls her Oh Maria, like the Hindi film song. And she kind of likes it because that Maria was Christian. So they wrote about all these things and they did some beautiful art and we made a book. And now, last year when I met them, some of those young girls, so aspirationally, many of them wanted to be teachers. So you can see that education is a given now, you know, they all want that. And many of them wanted to be teachers. And last year when I met them, the difference was that some of them had actually joined and they were doing their diplomas in education or a B.Ed and they were moving forward. So it throws up, why was it not possible for Hina, for example, and why was it possible for these women? And they were not working class women, so that's something I think to think about. And the last set of women that I'll share with you is last year I did a workshop with a group of girls from different working class bastis in Delhi, who have been in the business of creative practice for some years, and they've been writing, and they write about their neighborhoods, they write about people that they meet in those neighborhoods, they write sometimes about themselves. And this was the first time that they were going to actually make images, and they were going to learn to make narrative films. So we did a very simple workshop, and they picked characters from their bastis of whom they wanted to make films. Some of them were doing jobs which were in the basti for the first time. Women were doing things like that, which included working in a travel agency, collecting crowds for film shooting, Amazon packaging. So a lot of women like that. And they, through the course of the sort of short workshop, they learned to interview them, they learned to shoot kind of like a visual narrative, to be able to create, to tell stories using visual language. And in some way that I think points to the fact that how it's not education that is going to lead us. It's not only education that is going to lead us there, but what is the kind of education that we have? So what is the access, what are the other structures that are impinging on the education that we get, and what is the access to other kinds of things that we I'm almost done. What are the other the access to other kinds of things that we can we have exposure to, that will allow us the skills and the agency to be able to create those representations. So in this diversity of the women that I've encountered, I can see that the thing that we all need, and I need, and I don't think that they are different from me in that regard, is that we all want to be able to belong to something and to find that sense of community. So for these girls from Ankur, who I did this workshop with, that was coming out of this creative practice that they've been engaged in, and that little group that used to meet every week, and then for the course of like 2 months with me, and we formed that sense of belonging and community. But for Shabana, that sense of belonging and community was only possible either from within the village and the domestic family space, or which was much more kind of, it was much more pastoral, hands-on working, or the other option was the madrasa and the community that opened up for her. So I think that for us, and the way forward is to raise this question and to have a conversation about, how do we imagine these communities? What are the communities that we want to belong to? And then what are the ways in which we can allow for women to be able to have real agency? They are all going to school of some sort or the other, but is that really enough? And what are they learning in those schools? How is that being transacted? These are very complex questions, and they need to be unraveled in many, many ways. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
बहुत शुक्रिया। आज सुबह मेरी आवाज़ जा चुकी थी, तो मैंने जल्दबाजी में कुछ पॉइंट लिख दिए। आज वैसे भी हालात थोड़े ज़्यादा ही ख़राब हैं हर तरफ से, तो बात ज़रा संभल के करनी होती है, तो उसमें थोड़ी ज़्यादा संभल के मैं करने जा रहा हूँ बात, इस भरोसे के साथ कि जिनका हम मुकाबला कर रहे हैं उनका तो मुकाबला कर रहे हैं, वो इस कमरे में नहीं हैं, पर हमारे अंदर जब हम मुसलमानों के बारे में ये बात करते हैं कि उन्हें रिफ़्लेक्शन की ज़रूरत है, सेल्फ़ इंट्रोस्पेक्शन की ज़रूरत है, वो वाकई है जो उनकी कमियां हैं। पर उसके साथ साथ जो लार्जर, जो हमदर्दों की हमारी टोली है, उसके अंदर क्या सवाल होने चाहिए, किस तरह की सेल्फ़ इंट्रोस्पेक्शन की ज़रूरत है, मैं शायद आज उसके ऊपर थोड़ी सी आपको बात रखूँगा। और उसके साथ साथ डॉक्टर सैयदा ने जो कहा कि पर्सनालिटीज़ के साथ जो शख्सियात हैं जो यहाँ पर हैं, जिनका यहाँ ज़िक्र नहीं है, उनसे हम वे फॉरवर्ड के तौर पर क्या सीख सकते हैं। 2010-12 के दौरान मैंने फासिज़म के बारे में पढ़ाई की। तब शायद इस फासिज़म के बारे में इतनी सीरियसनेस नहीं थी कि ये क्या होता है, जुल्मत के दौर में क्या क्या चीज़ें होती हैं। तो हमारे उस्तादों ने हमें सिखाया, मैं दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी से मैंने पढ़ाई की है, कि सबसे अहम जो होता है हमला वो होता है याददाश्त पे, मेमोरी पर। और फासिज़म में जो सबसे बड़ा उसका रेजिस्टेंस है, वो सबसे बड़ा रेजिस्टेंस जिसे हम अंग्रेज़ी में कहते हैं मेमोरी अगेंस्ट फॉरगेटिंग। ये जो पूरी हम जो बात कर रहे हैं, जो मज़लूम हैं, जो ऑप्रेस्ड हैं, उनकी मेमोरी पर ही सबसे ज़्यादा हमला होता है। और ख़ास तौर पे जो इन लोगों को बहुत जर्नलाइज़ किया जाता है कि आप ऐसी बातें क्यों कर रहे हैं, हम एक से तो हैं ना, आप स्पेसिफिकली ऑपरेशन की बात ना करें, अपनी टारगेटिंग की बात ना करें, ये तमाम चीज़ें होती हैं। पर और साथ में ये भी कहा जाता है कि आप जो है जुल्म ज़्यादती के बारे में बात ना करें, आगे बढ़ जाएं। तो आज एक बात ये भी है कि जितनी लेयर्स हैं, मर्दों की तो कम से कम बात हो जाती है, पर जो मुसलमान औरतें हैं उनके साथ क्या क्या चीज़ें होती हैं इस याददाश्त में हमारे बिल्कुल वो औरतें रही नहीं। तो ये आज एक नई कोशिश है उन औरतों को अपनी याददाश्त में दोबारा दाखिल करने के लिए। ये 3 रोज़ा जो एग्ज़िबिशन है और ये कोलोक्वियम, ये अपने आप में एक अहम तरीन मुझे लगता है कि एक ये वे फॉरवर्ड ही है, ख़ुद ही अपने आप में वे फॉरवर्ड है। जैसे मैंने कहा कि याददाश्त का सवाल आज इसलिए भी कि हिंदुस्तान में जो मुसलमान हैं आज इतना रिड्यूस कर दिया गया है कि वो अपनी सर्वाइवल और सिक्योरिटी के जो सवाल हैं उनके वो प्राइमरी हो गए हैं। और अफसोस की बात है कि जो दुश्मन हैं उन्हें अगर हम छोड़ भी दें, जो मुसलमानों के नाम पर हमदर्द बनते हैं, जो इंटेलेक्चुअल्स और एक्टिविस्ट, मेरी ही बिरादरी जिनके साथ मैं भी काम करता हूँ, उनमें से अक्सरियत ऐसी है जिसके लिए आज मुसलमान एक बोझिल ऑब्जेक्ट बन गए हैं, या ये कहें कि बाज़ार में जैसे कोई नई कमोडिटी बन गए हैं। 2000 एक पहले से कमोडिफिकेशन हुआ है, पर एक नई कमोडिटी जो है 2014 के बाद बन गए हैं। मुसलमानों पे जो हमले हैं वो हमारे हमदर्द जो इंटेलेक्चुअल्स और एक्टिविस्ट हैं वो सिर्फ़ और सिर्फ, बड़ा अफसोस होता है, एक फ़िनोमेना के तौर पर करते हैं। लिंचिंग उनके लिए एक फ़िनोमेना हो गया है, टारगेटेड वायलेंस एक फ़िनोमेना हो गया है। जब मुसलमान औरत को एक पॉलिटिशियन ये कहता है और वो चीफ़ मिनिस्टर बनता है बाद में कि मुसलमान औरतों को जो मर गई हैं उनकी कब्रों से निकाल के उनके साथ रेप करो, और यूपी में 2 जगह ऐसा होता है, तो ये हमारे इंटेलेक्चुअल एक्टिविस्ट के लिए फ़िनोमेना बन जाता है, सिर्फ फ़िनोमेना। आज हिंदुस्तान के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हमारे जो हमदर्द सेंटर लेफ़्ट सेक्युलर लिबरल लोग, जिसमें से मैं भी आता हूँ, और हाँ प्रगतिशील प्रोग्रेसिव भी, हम मुसलमानों को सिर्फ़ और सिर्फ ऑर्थोडॉक्स सेल्फ ऑप्रेसिव होमोजेनस रिलीजियस ग्रुप के अलावा नहीं मानते, अनफॉर्चुनेटली। और हमारे जो सवाल हैं उसे मज़हब के पैमाने, मतलब जो राइट विंग है वो भी हमें एक मजहबी ग्रुप के तौर पर देख रहा है, हमारी जो प्लूरल आइडेंटिटीज़ हैं, बहुत सारी डाइवर्स आइडेंटिटीज़ हैं, उसको बिल्कुल मैश, उसका डिनायल। और जो इधर वाले हैं हमदर्द, वो भी हमें एक रिलीजियस ग्रुप के बाहर देखना ही नहीं चाहते। हम मज़हब के अलावा भी हमारी पहचानें हैं, और ये ज़रूरी नहीं है कि आप मज़हब को फॉलो ही करें तभी आप मुसलमान हो सकते हैं। और ये तारीख़ में ये कोई मैं पहली बार नहीं कह रहा, बहुत सारे और लोगों ने भी इस बात को कहा। और ये हाल ही में अपूर्वानंद ने जब राम गुहा और हर्ष मंदर की वो डिबेट चल रही थी, उसमें जो रिस्पांस में ये लिखा था कि लिबरल और आरएसएस में इस बात पर कोई फ़र्क नहीं है कि दोनों को मुसलमानों का मुसलमानपन, चाहे कल्चरली ही क्यों ना हो, वो बर्दाश्त नहीं है। तो आज ये मुसलमानों की डाइवर्सिटी का जिस तरह का इनकार है दोनों ही तबकों से, दोनों ही चाहते हैं तबके कि मुसलमान हों तो सेल्फ हेटिंग मोड में अपनी आइडेंटिटी को क्लेम करें या डिसोन करें, और इस्लामोफोबिक भी हों, कम्युनिटी बैशिंग में तो चैम्पियन ही हों। सॉरी, ये बात मुझे लगी कि मुझे कहनी चाहिए वे फॉरवर्ड में, ताकि जो ख़तरात हैं उसको जो है शायद हम अच्छे से कर पाएँ। आज सबसे बड़ा जो मामला है वो रिप्रेजेंटेशन का है। 1937 से 47 में जो डिबेट चली वो शायद थम गई। 47 के बाद से पार्टीशन का बोझ इतना ज़बरदस्त लादा गया कि वो बात हो ही नहीं पाई। शायद अब वो बात होने का वक्त आ गया है, और ये मैं साफ कहना चाहूँगा कि रिप्रेजेंटेशन का इनकार हिंदू राष्ट्र की जो परियोजना है उसके लिए मददगार साबित होगा। और अपने को जो मुखालिफ कहने वाले लोग हैं, मुझे कई बार ऐसा लगता है, क्योंकि आइडिया जो है आरएसएस ही उस आइडियाज़ पे काम कर रहा है, कोई हिंदुस्तान में दूसरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है नहीं। हम चाहे अपने आप को एंटी आरएसएस कहें और हम अपने आइडियाज़ को बहुत क्लियर ना करते रहें तो हम फंस जाते हैं सावरकर के शागिर्द बनने के तौर पर। मैं बहुत जल्दी अपनी बात रखूँगा। आप गौर करेंगे कि जो अभी हामिद अंसारी के ऊपर अलीगढ़ में हमला हुआ, उनके ऊपर गोलियां चली हैं, लातेहार में मसलूम अंसारी के ऊपर को फांसी दी गई, लटका दिया गया, कोई भी मुसलमानों के बारे में बोलने के लिए तैयार नहीं था। हम वक्त से पहले ही सेकंड क्लास सिटीजनशिप का जो हमारा जो नॉन आरएसएस सियासी और समझदार लोगों ने हमें उसका वो दे दिया। आप गौर करेंगे, मैं बहुत कम वक्त में अपनी बात कंप्लीट करूंगा, कि आप गौर कीजिएगा टेलीविज़न पर, आप गौर कीजिएगा पोडियम से, जब यहाँ जहाँ मैं खड़ा हूँ वहाँ से जब लोग बोलते हैं, बहुत सारे सेक्युलर लोग बोलते हैं, डेमोक्रेटिक राइट्स के बारे में बात बोलते हैं, सिटीजनशिप राइट्स के बारे में बात बोलते हैं, जब हिंदुस्तान के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के ऊपर हमले की बात आती है तो उनके आवाज़ जो है कहीं रुक जाती है। वो कुछ सेकंड के लिए रुक जाते हैं, ठहर जाते हैं कि हम बोलें ना बोलें दो अल्फाज, अल्पसंख्यक और मुसलमान। आप गौर कीजिए, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि आप जो है मेरी बात को मान लीजिए, आप उसको गौर कीजिए कि ये लड़खड़ा क्यों रही है ज़बान। और मैं ये कहूँगा कि मैंने कल डॉक्टर सैयदा से कह रहा था, जैसे फरहा ने कहा कि एक ये बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट आज के वक्त में पॉलिटिकल इंटरवेंशन है, उस क्लेम को, उस ढांचे को चैलेंज करने के लिए जो हमारे ऊपर थोपा गया है। एग्जीबिशन में कई जो है लोग नुमाया हुए हैं, कई शख्सियात हैं, इनमें से बहुत सारे हैं पर और इनके बाहर भी बहुत सारे लोग हैं, पर तीन औरतों ने मेरी ज़िंदगी पर ज़ाती तौर पर बहुत असर डाला। उनकी ज़िंदगियों को एक तरह से बहुत मुख्तसर में मैं वे फॉरवर्ड के तौर पर बात करते हुए कि उनकी ज़िंदगियों से हम छोटे छोटे क्या किस्सों से हम हासिल कर पाएँ, एक दो लाइन के। मैं बस जो सबसे पहली हैं वो हैं बी अम्मा। उस जगह पैदा हुई जहाँ मैं पैदा हुआ, उनके बाद अमरोहा से, यूपी के, शायद मैं अवध से नहीं, मैं इधर रुहेलखंड वाला हूँ। तो एक बहादुर औरत, और मेरी रिसर्च के मुताबिक ये एनी बेसेंट की जो दोस्त हैं, ये हिंदुस्तान की पहली औरत हैं जिसे आम आवाम ने, आम लोगों ने माँ का दर्जा दिया। और महात्मा गांधी भी उन्हें माँ कहते थे, माँ पुकारते थे। और ये इनको जैसे अली बरादरान का जो मामला है वो तो है, उनकी माँ हैं, पर हिंदुस्तान में बड़ा उनका नाम रहा और वो फरामोश हुआ। पर मैं आपको याद दिलाना चाहता हूँ कि वो जब जाती थी कांग्रेस और मुस्लिम लीग के जलसों पे, वहाँ खिताब करती थी। जी मैं ख़त्म करूँ तो वहाँ बी अम्मा जब जो है एक कलकत्ता में एक इजलास हुआ था और मुस्लिम लीग का इजलास था और ग़ालिबन 1919 का था, और उसमें उन्होंने कहा कि आज बहुत अंधेरा है छाया हुआ इस मुल्क में, पर मुझे ये अच्छा लग रहा है और ये उम्मीद कुन बात है कि मेरे हिंदू बच्चे मुझे यहाँ सुनने के लिए आए हैं। तो ये मुमकिन था। तो आज वे फॉरवर्ड के तौर पे पहला कि हिंदुस्तान में जो रिश्ते हैं हमें उसे दोबारा रिक्लेम करना होगा, अपने ज़ाती रिश्ते। दूसरी सबसे बड़ी शख्सियत मुझे जिनका मेरे ज़िंदगी पे असर रहा, निशातुन्निसा बेगम, हज़रत महानी की वाइफ। मैं उनकी अब कहानी नहीं बता रहा, पर उनकी ये हिम्मत थी कि जब सेवादल में पंडित नेहरू ने 1925 में लाठीचार्ज करा दिया तो उन्होंने पंडित नेहरू का गिरेबान पकड़ लिया कानपुर में। और बेगम हज़रत महानी सब कॉन्टिनेंट में अगर देखा जाए कि सबसे क्रिएटिव प्रोटेस्ट डिज़ाइन करने वाले, रेजिस्टेंस को डिज़ाइन करने वाले दो शख्स हैं, तो ये दोनों मियाँ बीवी हैं। और इनके बारे में मुझे लगता है जो आज होमोजेनिटी है प्रोटेस्ट की और मैस्कुलिनिटी है हमारे प्रोटेस्ट में, मोदी की तरह हम सब बनना चाहते हैं, आरएसएस की तरह हम सब बनना चाहते हैं, उनको विरोध करते हुए भी, तो हमें शायद उनसे सबक लेने की ज़रूरत है, जो प्लूरैलिटी है। तीसरी जो सबसे अहम शख्सियत हैं वो हैं बेगम अनीस किदवई, आज़ादी की माँ। आज़ादी की माँ और सीमा मुस्तफ़ा जिन्होंने सुबह बात रखी, उनकी नानी आयशा किदवई की दादी। उनकी सबसे अहम बात मुझे जो लगती है, जो मैं आप यहाँ से ज़िक्र करना चाहूँगा, कि जब आज़ादी के वक्त में हम तमाम चीज़ों के बारे में बात करते हैं कि मुसलमान यहाँ चले गए, वहाँ चले गए, पर उन मुसलमानों के बारे में कोई बात नहीं करता कि जिन्हें यहाँ से ज़बरदस्ती निकाला गया, सरकार ने निकाला, सरदार पटेल की गर्म हवा ने निकाला। तो सरदार पटेल की जो गर्म हवा है आज शायद कांग्रेस पार्टी पर हावी है, आरएसएस के अलावा। शायद राहुल गांधी उस हवा से ताल्लुक़ नहीं रखते हैं, पर कांग्रेस पे वो जो है सरदार पटेल की गर्म हवा हावी है। तो हमें ज़रूर आज बहुत सख्त अल्फाज में ये कहना होगा कि भाई आप उस लेगेसी को छोड़िए, और हमें बेगम अनीस किदवई जैसी हिम्मत मुझे लगता है करनी होगी। एक चौथी औरत का जिक्र यहाँ किया गया, और मुझे लगता है वो बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है, लार्जर जो हम बहुत एक वो बज़ वर्ड है इस वक्त, दलित मुस्लिम सॉलिडारिटी। तो उसमें फ़ातिमा शेख का जिक्र यहाँ आरिज़ भाई हैं हैदराबाद से, उन्होंने मुझे आकर कहा कि उनका जिक्र नहीं है इसमें, और शायद वो आगे डॉक्टर सैयदा उसको करेंगी। तो ये ज़रूरी है कि जो नरेटिव में वो भी आए, किस तरह से उन्होंने ज्योतिबा फूले के साथ मिलके और सावित्रीबाई फूले के साथ मिलके एक स्कूल का क़याम किया। आखिरी बात मैं यहाँ ये कहूँगा अपनी बात ख़त्म करते हुए कि आज हिंदुस्तान में जिस तरह के मामलात हैं, उसमें शायद हिंदुस्तान की जितने हमले हो रहे हैं, हिंदुस्तान की डेमोक्रेसी मजबूत भी हो रही है। इस बात को हमें ख्याल रखना होगा। 70 साल में पहली बार हिंदुस्तान के मुसलमान नौजवान, ख़ास तौर पे लड़के लड़कियां, अपने रिलीजन के फ्रेम्स के अलावा सिटीज़नशिप राइट के लिए इनकलाब जिंदाबाद का नारा सड़क पर लगाने के लिए आ रहे हैं। मुट्ठी बंद करके हाथ आसमान में उछालना पहली बार सीख रहे हैं आज़ाद हिंदुस्तान के 70 साल में। ये बहुत मुमकिन हो पाया है आप तमाम लोगों की कोशिशों की वजह से, चाहे पॉलिसी लेवल पे फरहा ने काम किया, डॉक्टर सैयदा ने काम किया, या जमाल भाई, या यहाँ तमाम लोगों ने जो काम किया है। आज मुसलमानों का रिप्रेजेंटेशन का जो सवाल है, मुसलमानों के लिए बोलने देने पे जो हमला है, उस पर हमें खामोशी तोड़नी पड़ेगी। जो लोग हमारे हमदर्द हैं, जो हमारे बारे में बोलना चाहते हैं, वो बोलें ज़रूर, पर हमें भी बोलने दीजिए, क्योंकि हमारी फीलिंग उसमें नहीं आ पाती। हमारी जो बातचीत है, जो हमारे ऊपर रोज़ाना हमले हैं कि हामिद अंसारी पे हमला हो, लातेहार में हमला हो, या किसी और पे हमला हो, हमारे कहीं पे भी हिंदुस्तान में हमला हो, और हमारे सब लोगों के ऊपर एक तरह का असर हो रहा है। नजीब की वालदा को जब यहाँ घसीटा जाता है दिल्ली में, तो वर्धा में बैठा हुआ एक लड़का सुसाइड कमिट करने की कोशिश करता है। तो ये तमाम चीज़ें कहीं आ नहीं रही हैं। मैं बस यही बात करके शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहूँगा। वक्त ज़्यादा लिया, माफ़ी।
This is you here?
Yes, it's me, Saman Habib.
I
Should I introduce myself?
invite you, Jamal Kidwai. Please take the chair.
No, no,
Saman Habib.
I'm Saman Habib.
Up down, okay.
So I'm Saman Habib, and I'm really pleased to be here. The two aspects quickly before I move on to, to say that, so apart from all the social, political implications of, where we are today and how women, including Muslim women, have to move forward. And the two aspects that probably haven't been touched really in today's discussion is the position of Muslim women in music and sports. And I'll just take examples of two women from my own family, which is essentially the Tayyabji family from my grandmother's side, who grew up in Baroda and were trained in classical music. And there was a lot of discussion on Sharifa Hamid Ali today. And very few people know that she was a very, very accomplished veena player. And the whole family had learnt music in their childhood. And this also came to Rehana Tayyabji, who, as Anil Noria pointed out, was very, very close to Gandhiji, part of the national movement. In her young days, very rebellious, but then turned to spiritualism. And it was mentioned, I think, by Laila Pupi today that she became a Sufi mystic. But in her early years, she was very much part of the of the active national movement, in the non-cooperation movement, and also the Quit India movement. And she rose to become the president of the Youth League of the Congress. Rehana Tayyab ji herself was a very, very accomplished singer. And it is in the 1921 Ahmedabad Congress that she sang Vande Mataram for the entire Congress session. My grandmother remembered, and she's written this piece somewhere that I found in her papers, on how when they heard Vande Mataram, when they were asked to sing Vande Mataram, they didn't know the tune of Vande Mataram because it essentially originates from Bengal. And C.R. Das's niece came to Ahmedabad for the Congress and taught Rehana Tayyab ji the tune of Vande Mataram. And then in that hall, without a microphone, for 2,000 and more people, she sang Vande Mataram, and it was really loved, and she was asked to sing this again and again. And there are many, many songs that, there are about 78 letters written to her by Gandhiji, and there's this long, extensive correspondence between her and Gandhiji, extremely personal letters, touching aspects of spirituality, her personal life, her refusal to get married, her problem with vitiligo, her illness, her tensions with her. So when she became a Sufi mystic, and in her teenage years, she writes this book called The Heart of a Gopi, where she is trying to explain her love for Krishna. And I wonder sometimes, one has distanced oneself in one's own life and has transcended religion and spirituality in our own work in life. But now that I think back on how it must have been for her at that time to be even writing these things and thinking about them, that one understands the larger context of the family and the times, that they were willing to exchange ideas, to learn from each other, and to constantly sort of explore the other, so to speak, which was not really the other, right? So, and I think her life, therefore, is a very important example. She later, in later years, after her parents passed away in 1936 and 37, she went to live with Gandhiji, and then she joined Kaka Sahab Kalelkar in the Hindustani project and lived in Gandhi Smarak Nidhi here in Delhi all her life till she passed away in 1975. She's written this beautiful book, and if any of you have the time to read it, it's called Suniye Kaka Sahab, in response to Kaka Sahab's query on the life of the Tayyabjis, and how is it that this entire family, this whole generation of them, was so politically aware, was so socially conscious, and what was the milieu in which they grew up, and what environment their parents and grandparents provided for them. I think it's a beautiful book. It's written in Hindustani, so it's this Devanagari script in the Hindustani way with a matra. So it's very interesting. It's a very, very beautiful book. The other part that I want to talk about a little bit is sports. And in this entire family, all of them played. All the women played badminton, and my grandmother played tennis. And when she got married in 1927 to my grandfather, this was a Shia Sunni wedding. She was a Sulaimani Bohra of the Shia, heritage. And she got married to a Sunni from Lucknow who taught in AMU. This was a Shia Sunni wedding. There is much excitement about that too, but I will not touch into that. She used to play tennis, and she was 19 at that time, and she used to play tennis in the contract of the marriage, it's mentioned that Sohaila will be allowed to play tennis when she goes to Aligarh. So they took it very seriously. What I'm trying to say here is not just a matter of pleasure. This is serious business. I mean, a woman has to play tennis, and she has every right to play tennis. And she'll be allowed to do so, and this is part of the contract. She was very proud of it. She told us all the time, when मेरी शादी हुई तो मेरे contract का हिस्सा था कि मुझे tennis खेलने दिया जाएगा. So she came here so it's not so simple. She comes to Aligarh and no one there plays tennis. No woman plays tennis, right? I mean, it was very difficult to imagine the 1920s women playing tennis in Aligarh. And so she sets up this club called the India Club, in which she plays bridge and tennis with some colleagues of my grandfather's in the AMU, among them Hadi Hassan Sahab, whose niece I think is here, Ismat Appa is here, we talked about him today. Hadi Hassan Sahab and others who played bridge with her and then also started playing tennis. And the India Club was made in response to the British club. There was an officers' club in the city where only British officers played and Indians were not allowed to play. So she sets up the India Club and starts playing tennis, and this club continued till independence, wherein when independence happened and most of the officers had gone away and the district magistrate, who was British, had stayed on for some years, she offered that he can now come and play tennis at the India Club, very magnanimously. And she continued playing tennis till she was 75. And I remember her inaugurating, well into her 80s, inaugurating the InterVarsity with a rally that she won. And the president of the club lost. So she was our Sania Mirza, in that sense. So now I come more to the professionals, and I come to more to my field and to medicine and science. And I saw in the write-up that was given to us that there were many scientists, and I am at a loss to understand who these scientists were. There were many people who were educationists, who studied science, taught biochemistry, zoology, botany, but there are very, very few researchers who actually set new paths among Muslim women, set new paths in scientific inquiry. And I say this with some sense of loss, and the fact that why was it so? And really the first medical doctor, as Akshanda mentioned today, if you look at the north, I think it was Rashid Jahan, because you don't really see any other name in medicine. And apart from all her literary work and from all her, her work with the Progressive Writers Movement and the Communist Party, and for which she became really she inspired generation. She inspired my mother's generation, people who left, who worked with her. There were so many, many people who were inspired by Rashid Jahan, who joined the Communist Party when they were in their teenage years and worked with her in Kanpur, in Lucknow, and so many other places. What is important, I think, there is a beautiful interview that was given by Dr. Hamida Saidul Zafar, who was Mahmood Zafar Saab's younger sister, much younger to him, and also an ophthalmologist of great merit and very, very famous. She set up the Gandhi Medical College at Aligarh, and many of you from Aligarh would have remembered Dr. Saidul Zafar. She talks of Rashid Jahan, who was a sister-in-law, and she talks extremely beautifully about her impact on medical practice. And that is something that we don't really hear today, because she was part of the provincial medical service. And that positioned her in various, small towns across UP. And she worked with the poor, she worked in Bastis, till she came to Lucknow and then set up her own little private practice, where she really continued working with the poorest of the poor and with women across. Hamida Saidul Zafar, when asked about Rashid Jahan's religiosity, says that she was completely irreligious. In fact, she hated religion. And I say this here because it's important for us to understand that these people had, as I said, transcended religion. That